Hi, everybody. Mondion Astral Oracles. I hope you're doing well out there. Things are a bit strange in the ethers at the moment, and a lot of people are experiencing adverse challenges where it seems that the things that they've been doing and putting into their life in the process isn't yielding the expected results. And that might be very frustrating if you've already had these experiences of opening up to stuff and feeling that possibly your life, but your emotional states and your relationship to yourself and to the world at large may have improved. Then there's often this questioning of what am I doing wrong? Why can't I seem to make it right? I'll give you the magic formula of creation. And that is that the thing that you don't want to look at is the exact thing that will bring balance to your system. So this is the secret of discipline. It's if you go do that thing that's the opposite of what your conscious mind has produced as a wish for you, then you will by necessity have to integrate and work that out. And it is essentially also reflected in the spatial dimensions that we live in. So, what is high shall be brought down, and what is lowly shall be raised up. This is how reality and energy flows. And this means that if you try to reach out for something, you'll lose it. Whereas if you try to go in the other direction, you'll finish the circle and you will come full circle and realize it. So if you're trying to settle your nervous system, for instance, or find relaxation, it's very, very helpful to do physical exertion. If you're trying to get a sense of personal acknowledgement, like social reward that society at large will recognize you as valuable, then it's often very useful to not strive after personal fulfillment, but to make yourself available to the service of the world at large. If you're trying to make the world feel good, it might be very helpful that you begin to settle in yourself and become incredibly defined, because that means that you become this kind of foundational rock that people can build upon. And I bet you can find it at all kinds of reflections on your own life, where you can see that the very fact that when you go do something that you actually don't really want to do, it yields very positive results. And if you try to strive for doing something that you really want to do, like following the excitement formula, then you'll often get into the exact spaces that will teach you what is missing or just show you the imbalances. And again, the statement that you create your own reality is, of course, nonsense. It doesn't make sense in a semantic like level of what words actually mean. Then reality is something that you have to agree upon with others that are outside of yourself. And the opposite of that is what we call solipsism. Like it's an image of the world where there essentially only is one mind, and that is projecting itself, which might be correct in a divine sense, but in the personal sense, it certainly isn't. So also notice that true meaningful relationships with others very often begin where you begin to recognize that their experience is as full, complex, and fundamentally mysterious as your own. And so creating your own reality, of course, also comes within limits, because all these definitions are not things you have created. You're always creating from tools that are available with you from the things at hand. Language isn't personal, and the physical world certainly isn't personal. So I bet, even though you create your own reality, you probably can't imagine a world where there are ups with no downs, or there are lefts with no rights, or there are joys without grief, because there is this compositional principle where things are mapped out in balances, and it's actually the framework of balance that's expanding, and it's the identification with the framework, it's the sense of spaciousness, it's really aligning with the emptiness of the world, that brings fulfillment. Again, another wonderful spiritual paradox. So it's a very helpful place to go if you feel stuck. That to go to the opposite of what you feel like doing, and then that will definitely teach you a lot more and probably make you a lot happier than where it is you're trying to steer yourself consciously. Because consciousness, of course, at its highest expression is still, it's joyful. It doesn't need to act or react. It can simply uh, be very, very restful, because it's composed of everything, and therefore has no place to go. But then there are these gradations of consciousness that in um, spiritual imagery of the world are created by heightening degrees of forgetfulness, of lack of awareness, of lack of connection. And this is how we get the world of shapes and mirrors that we inhabit, which is a very interesting place to occupy. But it's also very important that then when we deal in these spiritual terms, that we assign it to the right level, where if if we don't, we often get into these religious cop outs where we relinquish the responsibility we have, both for our own existence and for living our lives, by chalking them up to these kinds of let's call them like dead end spiritual truisms. So, for instance, you might, if you really subscribe to the fact that you create your own reality fully, you might begin to spout nonsense like slavery is a choice, for instance. And of course, again, if words mean what they mean, then slavery is per definition not a choice. It could never be. So, looking aside, like the moral repugnancy of such a perspective, and the lack of knowledge about history and stuff, then there is, of course, like a reality where it's interesting to discuss why is it that eternal spirit chooses to move into the world, and have what is, from the bodily perspective, incredibly adverse experiences. Um, why would you choose to live through the smallpox epidemics um, of the first Columbian exchange, right? Where it's like 90% of everybody you ever knew die off from some strange disease that's just taking grip of your land. That is like deeply strange for us to realize. But it stands to reason then that spirit, the spirit, the soul, has a very different set of priorities than our immediate incarnation has. And it's trying to adjust these levels and our understanding, and the acceptance of the totality, and often the contradiction of terms within the whole, that actually brings us satisfying emotional states. And of course, in times that were uh, more trying, where life was essentially more trying for people at large, were also times where spiritual wisdom and insight was prioritized. And of course, to get a little facetious, but there's a difference between sitting around in some North European town in the 80s, and putting safety pins in your cheek and feeling like the fact that you don't have money to get drunk down at the boozer for five days a week. That's really just an unfair lot in life, compared to your ancestors of 1,000 years ago, who, you get pregnant in February, and you know that if you're fortunate enough to survive that pregnancy, which you may not, then it still has to be a really, really good harvest this year, or otherwise we'll have to leave baby out for the wolves. Like people who live in that way, like that, the first thing isn't really punk, right? And the second thing is truly, truly punk. Like how harsh is that to deal with these circumstances where life will just force you to do things that are absolutely crushing in ways. Um, and to look into that, I have decided to connect to these Mantes beings. They turned up as I was doing the dishes this Saturday, and I've been having this feeling of protective, angelic guidance, but with a sort of grim slant, with somebody who also, they were very content with steering me into hardship and challenges, uh, because that was the place where I felt I could gain the lessons, and I could gain those things that were unpleasant to realize and look into and integrate. And I kind of, to underscore, try to compare their and understand their vibration, because it's angelic, but it's not necessarily benevolent. It's more linked to, let's call it, the strands of destiny. These weird spun trajectories of where life might go, that seem to surround it, but always elude clear awareness, because that would break the suspense of it all. So, for instance, I think in one video where I've spoken about them, it's the Jews out of Egypt and into the desert. So, yeah, was that from what that was from the frying pan into the fire in some way, right? And the promised land might be on the other side of that 40 years in the desert, but it's really gonna suck, and you are probably gonna miss the fact that at least you had a you had a meal in Egypt, even though you were slaving away. So it's these strange perspectives where they seem beyond good and evil, and an image that I often get associated with them is something like that. They are to the divine throne what the CIA is to the presidency, right? So like there's the face of authority and ostensibly benign government and everything out in the open, and this is the guy we elected to rule. And then there are like all these weird back channels of things we don't really talk about, but might actually be the thing that's working the Cold War. And are they like a force for good, or are they like a force for evil? And that is certainly dependent on your perspective and what to do about that. So in that sense, they have a trickiness about them, and it's also, I've never worked with them in sessions, and it probably would be entities that I would strongly advise people to not connect to unless they felt there was some calling, and I got that affirmed from their side that yes, there's a connection here, because they don't necessarily play around too much, or they play around that much that it might get a little rough. Is, again, the kid on the playground who just doesn't quite know what to when to quit, but might also be, the kind of bully you had to face in some point in your childhood, which actually taught you some harsh lessons about the world and your need to also assert yourself in it. So let's try to connect to the angelic Mantes. I like to underscore that they have this angelic vibration. They have, not only are they definitely 11D, so right here up in the sort of soap bubbly layers of universal creation, where everything is almost completely unmanifest. Um, but they are also connected to the divine stratagems that seem to run through the world. And that is, of course, the point where the fact that you create your own reality is true, but it's the unmanifest, eternal, unchanging part of you. And that part of you isn't necessarily embedded in reality as much as it is reality itself. So it doesn't really have agendas. It's mapping out and exploring and doing everything at once. I hope that talk served some of you. I can also tell it just helped me to map out some of these thoughts and rewatch them. Um, and I hope you feel that the lessons that you need and the balances that you need to strike in your life are also within reach for you. So, with love, let's talk to the mentees. Sleep here, flop here, unifying our vibrations, bringing them into a monotone, monochrome. Life gets so colorless and gray down here. The middle of the road is what you seek. Your preferences look to us so often simply as pain avoidance, as experience avoidance. And so we like to trip you up, to get you to swerve a little, to find a better balance. Say, dear friends, how would you even know the perfect shades of gray if you were not acquainted with pitch black and blinding white light? How would you even know what is your favorite color if lesser colors weren't a part of the palette with which you change and paint your life? You want us to honor you as helpless babes. You want us, that is the angels, the heavens, to help you remain the same, safe, secured, affirmed, and placed on a trajectory. But the strands of fate are not even like that. They are full of knots and loose ends. They are full of breaking threads and others that hold the rope tightly together, so that even when you move past these frail places, what you should also learn to see is a taut, unbreakable rope that is stretched out from the unknown beginning to the unknown end. Don't make us honor your weakness, because we do not see you as weak. Don't make us honor your complacency, because we do not see you as yielding. Don't make us feed your greed, because we do not see you as incapable. So all we are doing is to drag you out in places where you have to see yourself. We realize our friend here, he was commenting on the upper dimensions. And so the reason that we have not merged into 12th dimensional realization, becoming one with the all, fully accepting our place in that, is that mirroring would cease. And in this world of mirrors, differences have to be established. And the more garish the outfit, the more the mirror will have to reflect the unknown back to the person watching it. So for the serious person, could you explain to us why a pie to the face isn't exactly what they should be dreaming of, what they should be reaching out for? And since they don't do this, since they seek this deep balance, this state of conscious immovability that they remember from the deepest layers of their experience and consciousness, then who has to act? Who has to put a little chaotic good into the pot to make it full of nuances and flavors? You know very well that basic salt is bad for you, but with just the right pinch, just the right amount, for just the right dish, most dishes in fact, what it does is it brings out all these rich and nuanced flavors that were already hidden away from experience. They only became visible by this infusion of a vital alchemical ingredient. Is it not so? And so the silly person longs for seriousness, for a type of solemnity. The person who is caught up in anger, their states are seeking to release them from what they are experiencing. If they push it far enough, should it not revert to its opposite? Will anger not tire you out and lead you to acceptance or self-destruction? Are both not a cessation of that emotion? And so if you want to pursue love, allow for you to see the hatred, that the unloving may inspire, and then choose where love should go, where it serves the purpose of the loving, rather than feed the difference of the unloving. Nothing is unconditional in this world of mirrors. Only pure creation, pure being, pure radiance. Existence itself has no conditions put upon it. We are a part of that, as you are a part of that. There are no differences in the realm of pure existence. The fundamental paradox then arises within existence. Then, in order for it to be, it has to encompass this myriad of differences within it. Because love is not indifferent. It is a form of gratitude, a thankfulness from the silent language of the heart that repetitiously praises the movement of reality itself in all its abhorrent glory, in all its horrifying beauty, in all its unknown conundrums, to provide you with the answers and the satisfaction of having discovered something that seemed lost to you. We hope that was quite clear to you. We do like to play around more in spaces where you can't necessarily argue too much with us. In the realms of language, you can't question us. Rather, you feel it is your own presuppositions, your presumptions, your prejudice about what is, what should be, and what ought to be that is challenged by us. This is what we seek to do. But sometimes you need a little revelation. Sometimes you need a little prophecy. And we prophesize that the realm within which we exist, it has angles, dimensions that will meet up and link up in the end. So in whatever direction you pursue, you will reach the next corner, you will round the next turn, you will come to a place where the forking road leads you in another direction. But the shortest space to the center is the diagonal. And therefore, we prophesize a lot of diagonality in your life. We prophesize unknown lines forming roads through the wilderness and in to the heart of the forest, the beating heart of all life itself. Happy trails, sweet ones. Fleep and Flop signing off with the all that is encompass- encompassing you and us in this heartfelt exchange, in love, in a myriad of ways. We say this single goodbye. I much enjoyed communicating with them, and it was very helpful having felt like they were just out there to get them in and censor them, and they were nice enough. I remember from the message to kind of underscore that that's not their preferred way of communicating, but okay, if you insist, we are happy to do it. And unlike other beings, where I often get this clairsentient feeling of fairly clear words or emotional intentions, they have this sort of BB insecty vibe where it's just like high angelic singing that you can't really make out of whether it's harmonious or whether it's discordant, and that I think also probably relates to why they express themselves through this um, insectoid template, because it is something that's very alien to us, and at the same time seems to have its own proportions, harmony, beauty to it if we can just align with it. So yes, happy wanderings out there. Much love to you.